Yeah, I'm going there. I want you to think of an anime in the time it takes me to finish this sentence, though you probably already have something in mind. Whether it's what I showed before or something completely new, the odds it has a second season might be higher than you think. The reason for this is popularity bias. But how does that work? Well, the first thing that comes to mind for most, regardless of category, is normally something popular, so with a lot more eyes on a show that's more easily memorable, studios often want to capitalize by adding another season. To prove this theory, if you were to look at the top 50 most popular anime, over half of them have sequels. Now, this should come to no surprise, but if a show is popular, odds are the demand is there for another season, though that depends on format, storyline, source material, and of course the creators. But what's the true cost of a second season? To know this, you'll first have to know the cost of anime. Most of your favorites easily clock in the $1 million range. A big part does come down to animation, but it's surprisingly not everything. Shirobako, a show from 2014, had no action nor outstanding visuals, yet it reportedly cost $4 million for 24 episodes. Put in perspective, imagine the cost Mappa runs making new shows like Jujutsu Kaisen or Chainsaw Man. In addition, if you want your show with the best writers, the best voice actors, and the best OST in the business, you're going to pay top dollar for each of them. The more of these you check off, the higher the chance your show makes it big, but with such a high price, what's the risk? While this may come to no surprise, no single show has ever bankrupted an entire studio, no matter how bad the series was. An easy example would be The Promised Neverland Season 2, often regarded as the biggest flop in anime history. The studio that made it back in 2021 was Cloverworks, a generally newer company only known for about 3 shows, one of them being Season 1. Despite an early setback, shows such as My Dress Up Darling, Bocchi the Rock, Horimiya, and Spy X Family all released at or after The Promised Neverland Season 2, cementing the studio as prime competition for years to come. Now, a show's negativity may not be a threat to studio survival, but that doesn't mean they can't lose partnerships with licensors, distributors, and other production companies, making it harder to secure better projects in the future. Another risk involved is the show's reputation, something companies often avoid tarnishing as it could lead to less merchandise sold, which may be as high as 20 or 30% of their profits in some cases. The fear of underdelivering highly anticipated content might make directors back off production, but it also may not be their choice completely. So how do companies choose which anime gets a second season? While it's often a collective decision, 5 key people stand out. They are the executive producer, the studio head, the series director, the lead producer, and sometimes the rights holders, but I'll get into that later. For right now, you need the executive producer to be on board. If they're not, it might mean the show either isn't financially viable for another season or the demand simply is not there. The person to give that information would be the lead producer. Next, you have the studio head who must be convinced a second season has merit as a future project. Seeing as they manage the studio's operations, their approval is also key. Then you have the series director who explains the proposed content. Again, this falls back to whether the content's demand, appeal, and viability all align with the company. Finally, you have the rights holders, those that hold the intellectual property, often of mangas, light novels, or video games, depending on the adaptation. However, in times when a series is completely original, for instance, Serial Experiments Lain or Buddy Daddies, there are no rights holders you need to please or get the approval of. Now, adjacent to those 5 people are production committees, but not completely, since some of the 5 may work in those committees too. But what are they? Production committees, otherwise known as multiple stakeholders, collaborate and contribute resources, experience, and funds for the sake of producing a singular anime. Now, the amount of stakeholders vary per production, and agreements are hard to come by, but overall, this is very surface level. To summarize, both the 5 key people and production committees have considerable influence, but just in their respective areas. The only differences are individualistic over collaborative control. Over the past few years, anime has gotten much more popular, and while that sentence is about as obvious as the sky is blue, more demand means more anime, which I assume most of you know. Currently, this year, 16 anime are getting a second season, but how do you know if a show's ready for one? Some ways at least I see a series test the waters of whether a second season is needed comes from movies. This can be an easy way not to gamble as much money while still gauging demand and popularity. A lot of shows in the past have done this with great success, for example Made in Abyss, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, and maybe Saga of Tanya the Evil. I'm not necessarily saying they all needed a movie for that reason, but that they chose that approach before attempting a second season. When it comes down to it, anime is a business first and foremost. There's a lot involved and a lot to consider, so if there's a show you want to get a second season, the best way is to support the brand. Whether that's by buying merch, purchasing manga, or showing your interest online, it's important to know that your voice does matter. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.